Hello, and picking up from where we left off last time, I forgot we're going to do a rendering first to get some shadows that we can underlay below our line work. So I'm going to turn on my geometries, hide my line work because I don't need it for a rendering, and then begin to do two renderings that are going to be just simple for um, toning. I am working in Rhino 5 right now. I know for the evaluation version of Rhino and for Rhino 4, I am not sure you have Rhino renderer um, capabilities that we'll have, so I suggest that you either go to the computer clusters we have within the studios or just work within the set presets that you have. I think within Rhino 4 the toning didn't look too horrible, but it just didn't have the light options that we will have. So if I go into this blue ball here and right click, I'll get my render settings. If you expand this, then you'll get more of the details within it. Click on the Rhino renderer to get these properties to begin with. I'm going to change my resolution to 1280 by 960. And then I'm going to also set my DPI to be 300. This is going to be important when we're trying to develop line work from a rendering so that it's not too pixelated. You can go higher, but it all depends on the processing power of your PC or Mac. I'm going to change my ambient color to dark gray, and then I'm going to click on transparent background. And then for now, this is fine for what we have. I think the anti-aliasing was another thing we changed. I'm going to put it to 10 times high and then hit OK. So now if I'm set my view again to the diagram L1 so that this rendering will be exactly matching my line work, which is critical, and you left click singly on the render button, it's going to produce a render underneath, a render with the settings of the defaulted sun or defaulted light within Rhino. And what I'm going to check is this tone mapping. If you filter through here, you're going to see the shading change on the surfaces. The Reinhardt options, I think, was what was more successful for us yesterday. Yes, this was a good Reinhardt 2005 is going to be the one we're going to use. I also showed the Z-depth channel. That shows the proximity of the closest surface to the camera and then the furthest one away. That has some cool options. And then in your post effects, you can also see some filters similar to what is in Photoshop for editing this rendering. But for now, just keeping it at the whichever Reinhardt fits your view best. And you can play with the, it seems to be levels or gamma correction up here and make it more bright. Or it's just affecting my background. So I'll just leave it at 1 for now. And then I'm going to save as a PNG file so that the background will come in transparent, and call it rendering 02 and select save. So this was for laying shadows underneath our geometry. If you wanted to do a kind of soft skylight rendering as well, if you were going to put a plane below the geometry so that the shadows will be projected onto something, like so. Make it large enough that it goes off my viewport so that I don't lose any potential for the shadows. However, that's a bit too far below, so it won't render just about there, just so we get a little bit of an idea that there's an object above. Then make sure that this is the correct view, and then right click our render settings again and hit Skylight this time, and leave everything else checked. I'm going to double click this and hit render. This will take a little bit longer because the Skylight is using, I think, more of a intense engine to process the way the light is bouncing around the objects. So in case you have a really high output ratio, if you put it to like 15 or 18 or 2000, it might be way too time intensive for this type of rendering, and you might want to bump it down. But it still try to maintain that 300 dpi so that when we abstract some regions from it and make it into line work, it won't be compromised. So you can see it's looking pretty good. We picked Rhino Renderer instead of V-Ray or Maya or Max so that we could get the same perspective and something that is intrinsic to Rhino, because it seemed to be difficult to find one platform that you could all have access to. So for right now, that's why we're picking Rhino Renderer, just to output some simple tone. And you can see the shading below on that bottom plane, which is what we wanted, and some nice variation within the surface. So if we go into the tone mapping and then just see how these other options look, I think in terms of Skylight, that first one might be our best bet. Yeah, so I'm going to stick with the defaulted none because I want this soft rendered version. I'm going to click Save As, and then I'm going to click Rendering 02, and then hit Skylight, so that I know the difference between the two of them. And hit OK, and then close my renderer. So for now, we're going to stop here, and then I'm going to take us into Illustrator and Photoshop next.